Another amazing game at 7:30, Dalton. Number 9 Ole Miss at number 13 LSU. You guys better have multiple TV screens for this Saturday night slate because it is unreal the great games that we have Saturday night. Ole Miss at LSU, 2 top 15 teams in the country. And Dalton, this game has massive playoff implications. So both these teams, Ole Miss and LSU, have one loss this year. And so the 2 one-loss SEC teams, which means they can probably afford to lose one more time and still make the college football playoff. If you looked at what it was last year, the playoff teams last year at the end of the season, every Power 4 team that had 2 losses would have made the playoff besides Oklahoma. So there's only one Power 4 team that would not have made the playoff with 2 losses. So it stands to reason, if that happens again this year, that these 2 would make it in with 2 losses. But the winner of this matchup then, they still have a loss in their back pocket. They still can say, okay, we can still afford to lose one more time the rest of the year and still make the playoff. The loser of this game has to run the table. And if you look at the schedules for both these teams, running the table, that has to include at least one upset. Outside of LSU, Ole Miss has 2 more ranked games on their schedule in number 18 Oklahoma and 5th ranked Georgia. That Georgia game, I can promise you, Ole Miss probably won't be the favorite in that game, even though it is at Ole Miss. And LSU also must host Oklahoma. They also host number 7 Alabama, and they travel to number 15 Texas A&M as well. So you're looking at it right now. You're looking at these schedules. The loser of this game has to run the table, and running the table, like I said, means you got to upset a team. The winner of this game get some breathing room, at least for the playoff race.
I think Ole Miss especially, this is important because you talk about they each have 1 loss, but Ole Miss has a conference loss.
Yep.
And you know, losing to USC is one thing and out of conference, and I think that needs to be separated. It's bigger to win an out of conference game than it is to lose one. I don't think that hurts them as much because I think 1 in-conference loss at least keeps you in SEC contention. I'm not sure that if you have 2 SEC losses that you can make a title game right now. And I know there's a lot of kind of that cannibalism thing going on and everybody's playing each other, but Ole Miss needs this game in the worst way, being that their loss was to Kentucky.
Yeah, definitely. So, Dawn, you have the Ole Miss offense in this game. So what should we be looking out for when the Rebels have the ball?
Kind of 2 things coming together that we've talked about for a long time, okay? It is I've mentioned lately that Jackson Dart, the deep ball, has not been there, and that's a big part of the reason that Ole Miss has struggled on offense the last couple of weeks, right? It was big against Kentucky. They only completed 1 deep ball, and that was kind of a scramble drill miracle. You've got an element here where they're trying to rework the explosive plays back into their offense. And LSU is the perfect team to be able to do that against because we've talked about LSU's coverage unit since the beginning of last year, and it's not getting a whole lot better. This year they're 114th in coverage grade. Only Mississippi State is worse in the SEC. I mean, and then you're just talking about the LSU losing Harold Perkins, who was their highest graded coverage player last year. He's also arguably their best pass rusher. 103rd in EPA per pass allowed. They're not forcing incompletions, and the 9th highest percentage of 15-plus yard completions allowed. Last year, they gave up way too many big plays. They gave up 55 points to Ole Miss in this game last year, and the funny part about that one is Jackson Dart only went 1 for 7 on deep balls. He was tearing them up from under 20 yards, and they were creating explosives anyway. So if Ole Miss is going to get right with these deep balls, okay, and they're going to get that back in their offense like they had the first 4 games as opposed to the last 2, they're going to have a lot of success. This is the moment. If they're going to have a rebound moment with Jackson Dart, with Trey Harris and Juice Wells and anyone else that can get vertical on their team, this is the team to do it against. They put 55 on them last year. They beat the Heisman winner and Jaden Daniels in an absolute shootout. I think it was 55-49. This is the game where we will find out if Ole Miss refines it. They just played 2 really good defenses, by the way. When you talk about Kentucky and South Carolina, those 2 teams don't give up big pass plays, and they got really good pass rushes. LSU still has a lot of problems on defense. They're going to have to outscore them again. They didn't outscore them with Jaden Daniels. They're going to need their defense to be better because I don't know that Nussmeier is putting up 49 points in this game like Daniels did last year.
No, definitely. So, yeah, LSU's defense has to step up, and I think the LSU offensive line has to step up in this game as well, because this Ole Miss defensive line, I mentioned before, the Ohio State one of the best in America. Well, Ole Miss defensive line might be the best in America right now. But starting off the LSU offensive line, their two offensive tackles, Dolan, Will Campbell and Emory Jones Jr., currently top 50 prospects in PFF's 2025 NFL Draft Big Board you can find at pff.com. Campbell, in particular, top 10 prospect in that ranking and is the number one offensive lineman in that ranking as well. And they've been playing really well, right? LSU right now, 11th in the country in pass blocking grade at 82.2 mark. They've allowed a pressure at the fourth lowest rate in college football, only 18.2%. They also generate 2.2 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's a top 35 rate in college football. The issue is in that run game, though. LSU's stable of running backs only have 2.8 yards after contact per carry. That's 101st in the nation, which ultimately means that they have an average rushing attack overall, even though the offensive line is doing a pretty good job of blocking for them. Their opponent this week is the highest graded defensive line in the country, which has been easily the best part of this team and was amazingly a Lane Kiffin team. Usually a team that's built around the offense. So defensive line for Ole Miss has actually been the best part of their team this year. Right now this year, Ole Miss leads the country, 96.7 run defense grade so far this season. They're second in yards before contact allowed per attempt, and they're third in yards allowed after contact. Dolan, second and third, no other defense is in the top 10 for both. So there are two top three in yards before and after contact. No other defense is in the top 10. Ole Miss also fourth in pass rushing grade, and they lead all defenses in college football with 139 pressures this year, and 27 sacks are tied for the most in college football. And really, this isn't a one-man show. Ole Miss has 7 defensive linemen who have played at least 125 snaps this year. All 7 of them have 75-plus PFF grades, and 4 of those 7 are above an 80 grade as well. So I think this Ole Miss defensive line has been elite. You're going up against a really good LSU offensive line, though. But I will say the LSU offensive line, they've already played an elite defensive line in South Carolina, and they're okay. They had a 58.2 pass blocking grade, which is their worst mark since week 6 of last year. The run blocking is a little bit better, but LSU struggled with an elite defensive line already in South Carolina, and this Ole Miss defensive line arguably is even better than South Carolina's.
Yeah, it's a great unit, right? When you talk about Prince Umanmielen and Jared Ivey off the edge, and Walter Nolan, and my two-way superstar J.J. Pegues on the inside. You see him at fullback too, and maybe even at quarterback again, like he was playing last week down on the goal line. But no, it's a great unit. Their front seven's playing great, and it makes you wonder. All right, and I know they have a loss on their record. As good as their front seven's playing, because that was a huge question coming into the year, along with their offensive line. They get the offense figured out now, and they have this defense, we start talking about Ole Miss again, right? And I think another contrast I just want to throw in there, right? LSU gave up, 33 or 36 points to South Carolina?
Yes. Yeah, 36-33 at the final score, I believe.
Ole Miss gave up 3 points.
Yeah.
And Lenora Sellers was healthy, and we saw how dangerous them and their run game can be. This is the difference right now between these two defenses. You're absolutely right. This front seven for Ole Miss has been really, really good. Even in the Kentucky game, their defense was definitely good enough to win the game outside of a couple of plays.
Absolutely. So, Dolan, who wins this Saturday night game in Baton Rouge and ultimately keeps their playoff hopes alive, while another team is still alive if they lose this game, but they can't lose another game the rest of the year? So who has their backs against the wall after this game?
I think, look, the one thing that gives me pause is it is a night game in Death Valley, and we know how that goes, right? And last year's game was a really fun, tight game at Ole Miss that Ole Miss won, even though that was with Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. I think Ole Miss is better than LSU. I just do. I think that LSU's defense, it's been a problem for a year and a half now. The secondary especially. They don't have Harold Perkins now. And I just think LSU's defense in these big games is, if they don't step up, it's a real problem. Because I don't know, again, that Nussmeier, I know Garrett Nussmeier is really good, and Kyron Lacey, and they're getting Caden Durham going on the ground. But I don't know that they're going to put up 49 points like Jaden did last year, right? And their defense has to be better. And if Ole Miss finds it in this game, and this is a game where they should find it offensively, find the explosive plays again, balance it out with some run game, Henry Parrish in the backs getting it going a little bit, I think Ole Miss is a more well-rounded football team. I'm going to take them 38-30, get a big road win, turn it back around. Their defense has been consistent. Their offense, not as much, but they can find explosive plays against this secondary, against this LSU secondary.
Yeah, definitely. I got Ole Miss as well winning this game. I think What was my final score for this one? Yeah, 35-31. I think Ole Miss, they'll take advantage of a vulnerable LSU secondary. I think LSU secondary still has major issues. And I think that defensive line for Ole Miss, too, is really good. And it'll shut down an LSU run game that has been average this year because the running backs just haven't really done too much after contact and haven't done too much in terms of breaking tackles either. And I think that Ole Miss defensive line will also make Garrett Nussmeier uncomfortable enough to pull off this victory. So I got Ole Miss winning this one 35-31.